Honorable members of the Standing Committee on Finance, welcome the Minister. I'm not sure if the Deputy Minister is in the platform, the DG and the entire executive management of National Treasury. Welcome to the entities that report to Treasury, if they are in attendance. Welcome the media, the public. Today we are getting a briefing by the National Treasury on their strategic and annual performance plan. We were supposed also to get a briefing from SARS, but we have since received an apology from the commissioner that they are meeting, I think, a delegation from FATF, if I'm not mistaken. Alan will clarify that. Be that as it may, we'll have to reschedule them for another day to come and present their plans. So thanks very much. Let's move faster. Noxie, are you there? In case I get cut off, please take over. And if also you have a problem, Boma Villets, are you there? So that we don't run short of presidium. Because you can see that this load shedding has become more erratic. You never know when it will hit you. Let's move to apologies and roll call. Alan.
Chair, the only apology is Mr. Wessels. Also, just on your earlier point about SARS, the Commissioner is available tomorrow, schedule SARS to brief the committee tomorrow, Chair.
Okay. Let's take it from there. Let's accept the apology of Honorable Wessels. And then let's move to the next item. Minister, over to you and your team.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning, honorable members. Thank you for the opportunity to present National Treasury's service delivery performance commitments for the financial year 2023-24, which are contained in the annual performance plan that the officials from the department will present to you today. We present this plan in the context of difficult economic environment. Locally, economic growth contracted by 1.3% in the last 3 months of 2022, and the increasing severity of electricity shortages leading to long-term periods of load shedding will further dampen economic activity. You will recall, honorable members, that we revised our growth prospect to 0.9. The IMF has revised it further to 0.1. SARB has revised it to a different figure, I can't remember now. All of these assumptions are based on, all of these figures are based on the assumption of the intensity of load shedding. Depending on how you assume the intensity of load shedding, you arrive at that number. So load shedding and electricity shortages are a critical factor in impacting on growth. On the global front, commodity prices are moderating, credit conditions tightening in response to stubbornly high inflation, and prolonged conflict between Russia and Ukraine will represent an uncertain economic and fiscal outlook. Growing debt levels and associated higher costs of servicing that debt are crowding out the narrow fiscal space we carved out in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, worsening the impact of the subpar levels of GDP growth on our ability to pursue our developmental goals. And the 23-24 annual performance plan is an ambitious plan in response to these challenges. It is the final year of the National Treasury service delivery commitments as set out in the revised medium-term strategic framework of 2019 to 2024, which emphasized the necessity of economic growth to improve employment, easing poverty, reduce inequality, and respond to the emerging threat of accelerated climate change. Critically, the strategic framework includes the National Treasury's responsibility to ensuring fiscal sustainability through encouraging the efficient and effective use of scarce public resources and coordinating fiscal relations between the three spheres of government. Similar efforts will be dedicated towards stabilizing state-owned companies to be financially and fiscally sustainable while delivering on the national growth and development objectives. In addition to pursuing fiscal sustainability through narrowing the budget deficit, the National Treasury is also pursuing growth-enhancing strategies that balance fiscal prudence with interventions to boost economic activity. The fiscal framework presented in the budget review in February contains growth in compensation spending while increasing capital expenditure. Infrastructure projects will be financed through the Infrastructure Fund using public-private partnership and other funding arrangements to improve planning and speed up delivery. The annual performance plan also continues National Treasury commitment to implement high-impact programs such as the City Support Program, Neighborhood Development Partnership Program, Jobs Fund, and the Municipal Finance Improvement Program to deliver on national imperatives and departmental priorities. During 23-24, National Treasury will continue with the development of the integrated financial management system, and concerted efforts this time will be put in ensuring the system is rolled out. The plan also continues the targeted reduction of unauthorized, irregular, and fruitless and wasteful expenditure reduction in municipalities and municipal entities. This includes a consequence management and accountability framework to be implemented municipalities and municipal entities, as well as key focus on modernizing government supply chain management system. In conclusion, Chairperson, the National Treasury will continue to advance and protect surplus interests by implementing policies that advance the economic, financial, and development objectives of the country. Please allow me to hand over to the Acting Director General and the National Treasury team to take the committee through the NT's APP 23-24 in further detail. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Minister. And good morning to the chairperson. I don't see the presentation. And good morning to the chair and all honorable members in the meeting and all in attendance. So we are indeed presenting the annual performance plan for National Treasury. That first of all, we want to be able to indicate, as we always do, how we derive our mandate in terms of the functions of National Treasury. So our mandate is derived from the Constitution that calls for establishment of the National Treasury, which is supposed to ensure transparency and accountability and sound financial management and controls in our public finances. So the Chapter 2 PFMA and MFMA give effect to what the Constitution says and further outlines our functions. So together with the obligations arising from the medium-term strategic framework priorities, we have our strategic focus, which are informed by our mandate and our response to the priorities of the MTSF. So these are the 4 core strategic focus areas, about 5 of them, that National Treasury is focused on. Next slide. In order to carry our strategic focus, we are structured in 9 programs. So the 7 programs are considered core programs for implementing our mandate largely. The 8th program and program 9 are transfers to SARS and to financial intelligence and state security. The rest of them will be articulated in terms of what they are actually delivering. So in executing our mandate towards the impact that we are working towards of improved living standards, we are guided by our mission and vision, which is articulated here. And in this mission, we do specifically appreciate the centrality of our employees, who are key in enabling us to fulfill our obligations and deliver on our services and mandate with excellence. So our values underpins the culture that we want to establish, but that we have established in the National Treasury in order to pursue the excellence in the delivery of our mandate. So the next slide just reflects on the updates in terms of the legislation that is in Parliament. We have got 5 that are already being processed in Parliament, but we are also planning to table 2, 4, 6, 7 in this year. So I would like to hand over to Laura at this point, who is the COO responsible also for strategic planning, monitoring, and evaluation, who will then take us through the details of our APP. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you so much, Acting DG, and good morning to the committee. I did want to start our presentation by just placing our APP into the context of Treasury's planning ecosystem. Treasury has now developed over the last 4 years, as the committee has walked this path with us, a highly stratified, complex planning ecosystem that allows us to plan and monitor from the MTSF, where we are reporting on priorities 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7. Those indicators then find their expression in our strategic plan, and you will see that there is a direct correlation in terms of outcomes between the MTSF and the strategic plan. Noting that the MTSF is a government-wide plan, and therefore those outcomes that relate to joint initiatives will then be re-articulated into our strategic plan, reflecting Treasury's obligations. We have our annual performance plan, which is what we'll be discussing this morning. But Treasury also has divisional operational plans, which gets monitored in the same way as we monitor our annual performance plans with intensive quarterly reporting and a system of monitoring those plans. But Treasury's taken it one step down, and we equally now have a Chief Directorate operational plan for all 67 Chief Directorates that currently form part of the establishment of Treasury. And those Chief Director operational plans then link directly with the performance agreements that are signed by the Chief Directors on an annual basis. And in this way, we are able to then have a golden thread of planning from the MTSF to the actual work that Chief Directorates do, but equally that red thread of monitoring. We equally then are able to reflect the performance, both overperformance and underperformance that the department achieves, and we're able to track it down to the individual Chief Directorates. It's important to note that having this comprehensive planning ecosystem means that we are now able to locate operational outputs into divisional operational plans or chief directorate operational plans, and ensure that the strategic outcomes are located in the annual performance plan. It doesn't mean that if it's not in the APP, as committee members will know, that it's not monitored. Each of these plans are monitored in the same way as our APP is. For Program 1, our focus continues to be on the efficiency of ICT. ICT is a bedrock for National Treasury, and it is very much a determinant tool of success for Treasury, and therefore we continue to consider it a strategic indicator. And the target we have for this year is for 93% delivery against the service level agreements, which are internal service level agreements that IT has concluded with the various divisions. Just on the matter of ICT, members will note that we have an increase in the budget in respect of ICT, and that relates to a necessary upgrade of hardware. It's been some time that Treasury has upgraded their hardware, and we certainly are looking forward to this process that will increase our efficiency. Also to note, in respect of the AG finding on ICT, and that there is and the outdated Windows operating system. Just to remind the committee, as reported in the annual performance report, that refers to a single server. It's a it's a separate server that's used only for one work area. It's located in CETA, and there is currently a project underway to address that, noting that it is attached to the legacy systems, and that's a perennial challenge that we have in respect of the legacy systems, and upgrading those systems is a challenge, and also in terms of cost. We will continue to strive, noting the challenge with our audit from the previous financial year. We will continue to strive to have an unqualified audit opinion. We are hopeful that the processes that are currently underway between National Treasury and the AG, but more importantly, with the OAG and us addressing and accelerating the delivery of IFMS, that we will obtain an unqualified audit opinion with fewer findings. We continue to increase our risk. We continue to increase the maturity of our risk profile, as well as advancing training. As indicated by the acting DG, people are at the heartbeat of Treasury, and training is critically important to ensure that Treasury is constantly at the forefront of thinking in the various areas of our service delivery. Program 2 talks to economic policy. We will complete 30 research papers. These research papers are with the SA TIDE program. This program has now reached maturity. These research papers are informing and influencing policy development and are an important part of our knowledge management process. We will continue with the work of economic forecasting, as well as producing the imperative economic policy analysis and advice reports that Treasury develops and publishes across the year. Program 3 talks to the Budget Office. It talks to IGR as well as Public Finance, and the Jobs Fund equally is in this program. It's important to note in respect of the Jobs Fund that the Jobs Fund has come to the end of its allocation of funding. Treasury has committed to refund the Jobs Fund, and currently discussions are underway as to what the scope of the Jobs Fund focus will be, as well as the amount that the Jobs Fund will be capitalized with. Also, in terms of the Jobs Fund, the committee will be reminded that there was a finding on the Jobs Fund. However, as we have indicated previously to the committee, the Jobs Fund has very strict monitoring rules, which is imperative and part of the success of the Jobs Fund model. And in the absence of any of those rules being complied with, the Jobs Fund is not able, nor should they, then allocate those funds. And therefore, in a concurrent manner, and the Jobs Fund not allocating funding may in fact be not because of underperformance, but because of ensuring that the monitoring and evaluation system integrity remains. The Jobs Fund is also affected deeply by the challenges in the land bank, as the land bank is a key part into the Jobs Fund in the agricultural sector. Other work that will be done in this very important division includes the continued work on the budget, as well as the work that public finance does in monitoring the expenditure across government. We will also be introducing 3 reforms to enhance provincial and local government fiscal framework. There will be significant, there is and will continue to be a significant emphasis on municipalities, noting that the work that Treasury does in local government is indirect, because local government is a separate sphere, as the committee will know. Equally, provincial treasuries have a more direct responsibility, and therefore we are currently in discussions with the AG in order for them to understand the complexity of local government, the role National Treasury as a national department plays in creating a conducive environment for good public finance systems in local government, but equally to understand the support programs that we are implementing in local government. 2 issues that are important for us is one, that in respect of the 80 technical advisors placed as part of the MFIB program, we recognize that there's been an audit finding in that regard. This is a difficult indicator, committee members, as we've discussed previously. We measure that 80 technical advisors are placed in every quarter, but we have to take into consideration that underperformance may be due to the normal processes of advisors resigning, of procurement processes to reappoint new advisors, and during the quarter, that may mean that we have fewer than the 80 advisors. However, given the importance of assisting municipalities, this is an important indicator, and we will continue to monitor it, noting the challenges of the technical components of that indicator. Also importantly in this area, IGR has completed an assessment of the success and impact of the interventions that have been implemented in respect of capacity building at local government. That assessment has produced important recommendations, and those recommendations are currently being implemented and will be part of the deliverables for this financial year. For Program 4, we know that there are fewer indicators in the APP for this financial year as opposed to previous financial years, and committee members will know that through the years, Treasury has embarked on a process of honing our planning processes as well as our ecosystem, as I've already alluded to, by introducing those additional planning and monitoring levels. But equally, we've looked at our indicators over the years and ensured that they not only are smart, but that they are measuring against mandate, and where processes have now been embedded and move from strategic to operational. We shift those indicators into divisions' operational plans or chief directors' operational plans. This does not mean they're not monitored. As previously indicated, they are monitored in exactly the same way as the APP. For this program, 3 of the previous indicators we found, in fact, were overlapping in their measurements. And so in order to sharpen our monitoring, we consolidated into a single indicator that it better expresses the strategic intent of us exercising oversight over state-owned enterprises. And then we shifted 2 of the indicators into the operational plans. We will continue to finance government's gross borrowing requirements over the MTF, but most importantly, we focus on minimizing the risk emanating from the fiscal obligations by continuously measuring performance and ensuring compliance with markets and refinancing risk benchmarks. For Program 5, this will be the first year committee that in some time that we have permanent heads for both of the divisions that constitute Program 5. We have a CPO and an accountant general. So we're certainly expecting the performance in these 2 divisions to rise to the same level across the institution, which generally is about 80%. Key focus for OCPO this year will be as we bring the procurement bill to Parliament, we will then start issuing the supporting regulations as well as restructuring the OCPO to be able to deliver on the significant changes that will come through on the procurement bill. For the OAG, the focus is on IFMS. It's a key priority. We have already released a IRP, and that closed over the last short period. And so we're certainly working on that. Negotiations continue with Oracle in respect of the cloud cloud platform, but with the newly appointed MD of CETA, the Accountant General has reported that he is hopeful that we will be able to shift IFMS significantly this year. Our critical focus is on the system developed. That means that we have to appoint the service provider in this year. And as the committee will know, Treasury is now taking a more direct responsibility for that procurement, and we will roll out the e-recruitment module. For Program 6, we continue to advocate for South Africa's financial, economic and developmental interests in forums regionally and globally. So we will be participating in the key areas as we have both in SADC as well as continentally, and in terms of our participation in institutions like BRICS. Program 7, we have now geared up our required target of compliance to our SLA at 99%. So we're expecting 99% of benefits to be paid within the turnaround times, as well as the integrity of client data to be approved, and a 98% reduction of fraudulent claims. And this talks to improving of internal controls. In respect of HR, as has been noted, we're expecting a slight increase in our total headcount. This is as National Treasury fills critical positions and we are expecting in this financial year to complete our organizational review, which will result in some reorganizing of the structure of Treasury, but not the workforce which is currently employed. At this time, Acting DG, I will hand over to Sandile, who is our Acting CFO, to take us through the financial aspects of our APP. Thank you, Sandile.
Thank you, Laura. Good morning to the Honorable Minister of Finance, the Chairperson, and the member of SCOF. I will actually be taking you through the financial resources plan for National Treasury. On this slide, you will see that the actual expenditure for 2022-2023 expenditure were actually projected to be higher over the medium term due to an allocation of 5 billion, which was made in the previous financial year. I think we all know that we have made a transfer of 5 billion to Land Bank as a result of the capital injection to the Land Bank. So when you compare the budget of the department with an over a medium term, you'll see that there is consistency as looking at the 34 billion in the current financial year, and the following year, which is 2022, 2024, 25 is 33 billion, and 2025, 26 is actually 34 billion. If you can go to the next slide, the next slide just provide an overview that based on what is being allocated in the previous financial year, it was 38 billion, and the increase is that allocation of the Land Bank. But in the 3 years, which is an over the medium term, you are looking at 34 billion, 33 billion, and the 34 billion. So in short, our budget is actually not increasing unless there is a need that the Minister of Finance needs to assist or intervene in those entities that approach the Minister of Finance. If you can go to the next slide. Chair, on this one, it just show an overview that the department's 34 billion, the significant amount that is being allocated, which is 85%, is an appropriated of transfer and subsidy, which are made to public entities that are reporting to the Ministers of Finance. If you look at the table, you will see that revenue, which is SARS, we have allocated 12.1 billion. Financial intelligence and state security is 5.5 billion. Those are the transferred to this entity, as well as the civil and military pension contribution, which is actually program 7, JIPA, the Government Pension Administration Agency, which is actually assisting the department with the pension. You will see that there is 6.9 billion. So all in all, the bulk of the budget of the department, it has to do with the transfer that are made to these public entities. And the other one is actually the conditional grant, which is made, which are transferred to the municipality. You will see it under program 3, public finance and budget management. We have 3.4 billion, which are being transferred. So all in all, this is just also an overview that our budget actually is not based on goods and services. You see the goods and services looking at the operational of the department, and compensation is a 3%, goods and services is 6%, payment of financial asset is 5%, and those payment of financial asset, it has to do with those capital contribution to the New Development Bank, also the CMA, which is the common monetary area compensation to those neighboring countries for keeping our rand currency, the payment of capital asset, which is 1%. So here it's just showing that the big pie of our budget is on transfer and subsidy. As I've indicated, that those transfer goes to public entities that are reporting to the minister. Thank you, Chair.
So thank you very much, Chairperson. We would like to hand over to you for discussions.
Okay. Thank you, Minister and the team. Let me invite members of the committee who would like to ask clarity seeking questions and make comments to do so now. Yeah, there we are. There are members who want to ask clarity seeking questions and or make comments. Let me, in the meantime, just ask one question. I see there are a number of legislations, I'm not sure whether there are 7 or so, which will want to come table in Parliament. We are now in April, and Parliament will be rising earlier, I hope. I haven't checked the parliamentary program due to the election program for next year. Do you think that it will be possible for this committee, if we haven't started with all those bills, to process all of them? Because the sooner that you table those bills, the better. And we have been calling for you for quite some times, more than 2 years, almost 2 years or so, that can you please try to expedite the tabling of bills. But now I see you want just to come and drop those bills with us towards the end of the term. And that will make our life very, very difficult. Already, the program for the second quarter is out from now until June. So it means the only time that we'll be able to process those bills will be the last 2 quarters of the year, because the first quarter next year, I think we're going to be in Parliament for a shorter period. Any other question and or comment? In the meantime, let me, Noxie?
Yes, Chair. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chair. Let me come in there. In fact, Chair, I also had the same question about the bills that the department says are currently in Parliament and those that are still coming. So I just wanted to check, sorry. One, what bills are those? Because we have, as you correctly state, Chair, we have to be aware of what is urgent and what is it that can wait for the next term. Are we here talking about bills that have to be passed this current financial year, or are we talking about bills that have to be there but have no time constraints? Secondly, Chair, my question would have been on ICT, and I think it is really critical that the department takes us into confidence as to what it is that is difficult for the department to at least plan to deal with the challenges with ICT 100% and not aim at 90 or 93%. I think we have to be taken into confidence as to the difficulties in the area. And next, Chair, for me, is the issue, if the issue of the theater and Oracle will be answered by appointing a new head at the helm, it doesn't really tell me what the department wants to do. Because for me, when you appoint a new head, that head has to get matching orders from you. I do not want to talk about the amounts that have been spent so far, because that is that has now happened. What we saw during oversight happened, and I think one needs to know what it is that the department is going to do differently now. Chair, for some reason, I felt that the CFO is not giving us everything that he needs to give us. He is not talking to the financials. Fortunately, the financials are not even even a long presentation. They're not, and therefore I would have expected that he would then, because of that, take us through everything. I might be wrong, but I saw him jumping from one item to the other, starting at the bottom, going up, and not really reaching the top. So, sorry, if only we could be given the entire a briefing or presentation on the financials. Thank you.
Thank you, Noxon. Honorable Sarpan.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and I hope everyone is well. Chairperson, just with regards to the presentation, what I am missing from this particular APP is a sense of National Treasury measuring both its outcomes and its impact. It's very input orientated. And Chair, I'll use an example. It's on program 2, the Treasury says that they're going to complete 30 research papers, which is wonderful. They set a numerical target. That's an output, not necessarily an outcome, because what are those research papers going to achieve? What are the areas that they intend, for example, on influencing? We know that in 2019, they produced a macroeconomic strategy document that's actually very good. And Treasury, of course, always produces good work, but it had zero implementation and therefore zero impact. So the outcomes are missing. I find that is one of the key problems with APPs and government in general. So it's not a specific problem to Treasury. With regards to asset and liability management, ensure timely and accurate payment of government debt obligations, avoid credit defaults, that's very good. But we know that other government departments, and then that takes us to program 5, other government departments and particularly municipalities are failing to make their payments to suppliers within 90 days, for example, causing lots of hardship in small business, and that is causing all sorts of issues. Then when we look at ICT efficiency, Chairperson, I think that Treasury is probably one of the few institutions that gets ICT and that operates it very well. But there's no sort of proper functioning across government and ICT, and that's because the CETA Act centralizes to such an extent that we can't actually modernize systems up and down governments. And I'd like to understand what engagements Treasury has had with CETA as well to ensure that there is modernization of ICT across government, because that is one of the big things. And it's also, as a consequence, causing issues with financial management. We know that good management systems that are technology-based and automate functions where we no longer have to push paper around result in more financial efficiency across any institution. And then, Chairperson, lastly, I see that they have set on program 7 a 98% reduction of fraudulent claims through improvement of internal controls. I think that's amongst others, I think that the targets here are very precise as to what sort of output-orientated target should be. where you say we're going to reduce 98% of fraudulent claims, 99% of integrity data. Those are actual outcomes rather than outputs. And I think that should be the model for every program and for generally government departments across the board. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, can I check, honorable members, whether there aren't any more takers before we give over to the department to respond to some of the observations that have been made? Okay. In the absence of hands from members, can we have some responses from the department, Honorable Minister?
Thank you, Chairperson. Well, I will allow Laura and Sandile to start with the response, and then I will wrap up.
Thank you so much, Acting DG. In respect of the questions, certainly we are very aware of the reduction of time that will be available for us to present bills. And we are equally mindful of the full calendar for the committee. A process is currently underway where we are looking at those bills that we've listed specifically to be able to do what the committee is asking us, and that is to prioritize that which needs to go this year, into this process, and that which can be left over. So certainly there'll be engagements between the Secretariat and our legislative unit to ensure that we put forward into the system what the system can carry. In terms of ICT, the reason why we have not put 100% is because part of that, all of the services from ICT are reliant on the feed we receive from CETA. So the actual data lines that Treasury use is not owned by Treasury, but rather they are owned by CETA, and we recognize that there are challenges in terms of continuous delivery, and so we factor that into our indicator so that underperformance by CETA is not reflected on ICT, but equally we are able to identify where underperformance is actually in ICT and is not blanketly attributed to CETA. So that is why we don't have 100% indicator, but rather linked to the realities of our ICT ecosystem. In terms of CETA and Oracle, absolutely. Having a appointed accountant general does not mean that all of the challenges that we have had with IFMS are going to be resolved. But certainly what it does mean is that we have now a champion who will focus the actions and ensure continuous supervision so that we can unlock the delivery of IFMS, particularly given that Treasury has indicated that we will be shifting that delivery more directly into the realm of Treasury, although we are very hopeful in the promising discussions that have been undertaken between CETA and Treasury, that CETA, that there's going to be a turnaround in the delivery of CETA, but we are realistic and we recognize that delivery on IFMS is a key priority and we will directly be managing the all-important procurement process as all other processes are reliant on that. In terms of outcomes and impacts, yes, we agree. We do have output indicators, but we recognize that given that Treasury is a policy department, much of the work that we do is actually process work. So outputs from other departments become inputs into Treasury. Equally, outputs from Treasury becomes inputs into other processes. And often when you measure processes, you measure them as an output rather than an outcome. However, as indicated, what we've done to try and mitigate that risk and still be able to quantify whether the actions that we take on an annual basis will have an impact on service delivery, is that we correlate our APP to our strategic plan and to MTSF quite purposefully, and those are outcome indicators. Our strategic plan is 5-year outcome impact indicators as well as MTSF, and in that way we try and mitigate that risk. In terms of modernizing of systems of ICT, it's a challenge across the whole of government. Certainly it has impact, as we know, across a range of key economic pathways to growth. This includes, for example, systems in mineral and energy to increase investment in mining. This includes systems in SAPs that will be able to assist us to dispense cases more quickly and therefore have a better sense of our safety and security. And equally for Treasury, we've been affected by IFMS. So certainly we are hopeful that as we do these negotiations with Oracle, for example, to shift to cloud, as discussions are underway around accelerating IFMS, that this will give CETA an impetus to accelerate delivery across other areas, noting that we are restricted by the CETA Act, as already been discussed. In terms of municipalities, I will leave that for Acting DG to speak on. It's a challenge, as we know. And then I'll leave it Acting DG for the CFO to discuss matters relating to finance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Laura. Sandile, do you want to comment on the issue on the finance presentation?
No. Thank you, Acting DG, and also thanks for the question. Through you, Chair, I can also go through the 3 slides and provide the details of the finances of the department as requested by the member. If you allow me just to go through to slide 16 and 18, just to give more details. Slide number 16. I think while waiting for the slide to be shared here,
Sandy, sorry, I'm not able to share. The screen sharing window has stopped for me. So perhaps the Secretariat can share. Thank you.
Sorry, can I please ask Beauty if you can maybe share, because I've got load shedding, so I'm connected with my phone. I can't share from my phone.
If you can please go to slide number 16. And thank you for for this slide, it actually provide an overview of the department's finances. All in all, these finances are actually aligned with our annual performance plan as presented by the acting CEO. So the first two slides, it just provides an overview. The adjusted appropriation for the previous financial year, which is 22-23. It provided that the department has a budget of 38.8 billion. And the main contributors on this 38 billion, you will see down there, which is revenue administration is 11.6 billion, is the amount that the department is transferring to South African Revenue Services on a monthly basis from the beginning of the financial year until the end of the financial year. The program, which is financial intelligence and state security, which is 5.3 billion. And these are also transfers that are made to the state agent, which are done. The program 7, which is civil and military pension contribution to fund, is program 7. You will see the budget is 6.9 billion. These are the transferred also to government pension funds, which is the agent that reports to the minister. So the other one is actually the ALM. If you look at ALM asset and liability, which is program 4, we have 6 billion. In the previous financial year, through the second adjusted appropriation, the minister approved an additional of 5 billion to be allocated to Land Bank for capital injection. So the 5 billion were actually transferred to Land Bank in March 2023 toward the end of the financial year. So this 2 column is actually showing the actual expenditure as 31st March 2023. I think also this will be audited in this current financial year and being presented through the annual financial statement as well as annual report. So the last 3 columns also provide an overview of what is the baseline over the medium term for the department. So we are going back to the baseline, which is 34 billion in the first year, which is the current financial year 23-24. The second one is 33.1, which is the 24-25 financial year. The last financial year, which is the third, 25 and 26. So these figures will change through the medium term processes. So it is aligned to the strategic plan of the department. If you look at from program 1, you have 706 million, program 2, 172 million, program 3, which is the public finance and budget management, is where the conditional grant are being allocated for the municipalities, as well as the consultants which are paid. You will see there is 4.3, and the bulk of the amount is the conditional grant that are allocated to municipality. Program 3, you have asset and liability. If you check in the previous financial year, we have 6 billion, now we have 1.1 billion. The 1 billion that is being allocated there is meant for the call on guarantee for the Land Bank. There's a provision of 1 billion for those call for guarantee for the Land Bank. The department will be ready to meet the obligation. Program 5, which is financial and supply chain management. This is the Office of the Accounting General and the Office of the Procurement Chief Procurement Officers, 1.2 billion. You have IFMS under the Office of the Accounting General, which is also the bulk of the budget. There you've got also consultants which are assisting with the computer services and also the SITA. International financial relation, here you have foreign institution that we transfer funds, like the New Development Bank, the CMA, the World Bank, which are being allocated there. Those are the transfer capital contribution for government, the South African government, to become members in this foreign institution. This is 2.5 billion. The program 7, which is government pension fund, you will see that the 7.77 billion. Those are the pension fund, post-medical benefit. Those are the funds that are being transferred to JIPA, who administrate the pension and the post-medical benefit on behalf of the Minister of Finance. I have reported that revenue administration itself, we are planning to allocate 12 billion for this current financial year, and financial intelligence and state security, you have 5.5 billion. So all in all, our budget is actually very minimum, but beside that, we have so much that we are transferring to our public entities, to our foreign institutions. If we can just go to the next slide. Next slide, it just provides a high overview just to show the first red graph shows what was budgeted in the previous financial year is 38 billion, and the actual expenditure was 37 billion. So we have underspent, but this will be reported in the financial statement, and it will be presented also to Parliament when the annual report is ready. So our annual performance plan, it is based on the third column, third paragraph, which is 23-24 budget. We have budgeted for 34.8 billion. The other outer 2 years, which is 33 and 34 billion. If you can just go to the next slide. This slide, Chair, just provide an overview, the summary of the budget. You know, if you look at the first column, it is the 34 billion that is being allocated for this current financial year. And then the second column, it just shows the percentage, the contribution, which is the compensation. Our compensation of employee is 920 million, which is actually a 3% out of the 34 billion. You go to the goods and services. Goods and services also indicate that we have 2.1 billion for the department to be able to operate, to be able to provide service delivery and be able to meet the mandate of the department. We are looking at 60% out of the 34 billion. So there is just a breakdown of from program 1 to program 6, how much is allocated for goods and services. If you go to the next column, which is the transfer and subsidy, that is where you see that 29 billion, which is 85% of the budget, it has to do with the transfer and subsidy. Program 3 contributes 3.4 billion, which are those conditional grant to municipality. We also have international financial relation, which is those foreign institutions, World Bank, New Development Bank, 1.6 billion. We have 6.9 billion under program 7, which is the cheaper one, the transfer to post-medical benefit, pension, and other claims that are being administered by program 7. The revenue administration, this is 12.1 billion. These funds are being transferred on a monthly to South African Revenue Service for South African Revenue Service to be able to collect tax on behalf of government. This is 12 billion, is transferred monthly, and the full amount every year it is transferred the full amount, as well as the financial intelligence and state security. We have 5.5 billion, which is being allocated. If you go to the payment for capital asset is another column, is when we are procuring ICT infrastructure, computers, any item that relate to asset. It can be tangible asset, it can be intangible asset. The software is amount of 163 million, which is contribute to 0.5%. The last column is the payment for financial asset and liability. I've talked about the 1 billion, which is meant for call for on guarantee for land bank. The 907 is also the international relations. So this contribute 5% out of the 34 billion. Can you please go to the last slide? This slide, Chair, and the members just provide an overview once again to show that our budget, our annual procurement plan, it is based on these figures, which is transfer and subsidy, 85% contribution, and then 6% is goods and services. Compensation paying employees of National Treasury is 3%, which is 920 million. Payment of financial asset and the payment of capital asset is 1%. The last slide. No, thank you. I hope I have I've managed to give more details on the finances of the department. Thank you, Acting DG and the Chair.
Thank you very much, Sandile and Laura. So I just want to add also on the question on the bills, the issue of too many bills. So what I just want to point out is that most of these bills, like 3 of them, are annual bills actually. So they have to be Division of Revenue Appropriation Bill, the annual tax revenue. So those are annual bills that would have to be processed, and it's an annual thing. So the big ones, obviously, even if they are tabled this year, we will be expecting them to be processed, over time, not necessarily to have been signed off this year, as we are actually continuing with these ones that we tabled in the last year amongst the 5 that are there. So I do think that it will not be as bad as members are fearing. So on the issue of the systems in local governments, I think there we have introduced through the Municipal Standard Charts of Account a very progressive system in also of reporting, which actually enables municipalities to report, to capture their plans and link those to the budget and link those to what they are spending and be able to transact into the systems. So we do have systems vendors that have been vetted to have M-score compliant systems. That's also, we have also made sure that the costs are reasonable, where municipalities can tap into. So we have been implementing M-score, I think it's probably the 4th year, we are institutionalizing it. So what we are realizing is that although it is so powerful system that also will enable much greater transparency and accountability, that there's a tendency to try to avoid using it fully, like for instance, transacting into the system and sometimes using the spreadsheets, even though they have got access to system, and some of them partly is capacity. So what we are continuing to do now is to work towards full institutionalization of this M-score and the systems that are underpinning it, so that all the work is automated, and because it does also put controls that will make it much easier for them to be compliant with audits, as an example. So I do think that we have got something that we are working on that we believe in the next few years we will be in a different space. Minus the fact that local government is a bit of a challenge, but the systems are there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm sorry for that. Thank you so much. I know, Acting DG, that for men of finance, they've got fewer words. So that's why I wanted to probe Sandile to give it to us, because we are oversighters, and therefore, if he just makes a very broad overview, then he loses us. Honorable Shivambo.
No, thank you very much. I want to check if the minister is in the meeting, because I think there are certain things that have to be clarified. I wanted to make an intervention earlier, but I had difficulty with network, which obviously is due to electricity where I am. So I only got to be properly mainstreamed now. And I want to talk about electricity as well. The ESCOM debt relief bill gives a conditionality that ESCOM can only expend on capital expenditures that are restricted to transmission and distribution of electricity. But we all know now that the biggest problem of ESCOM is on generation of electricity. So what kind of intervention is that? Like, I know that we could have dealt with this in a different context.
Honorable Shivambo, are you sure you're not muted? Am I the only one who can't hear Honorable Shivambo?
We heard the last point about generation, and he disappeared after that.
Honorable Shivambo, you are muted. And I think we also lost him now. Let's just check. Alan, what is the situation? Have you lost Honorable Shivambo?
He is still online. His microphone shows that he's unmuted. So I think it's probably just a connectivity issue that he has.
Oh,
Hey,
okay.
am I clear?
Honorable-
Am I clear?
Yeah,
Yes.
you were muted for about 2 minutes or so. You are clear now.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, it was again electricity changing. I was asking the logic behind restricting ESCOM to transmission and distribution of electricity, and basically saying that there must not be any expenditure on generation of electricity. And what is ESCOM going to transmit and distribute if the conditionality which National Treasury has given is that stay away from generation? It's senseless. It's actually the most ridiculous thing that can ever be done by any responsible government in terms of what happens. And then the second issue is in relation to the permissibility now of municipalities sourcing their own electricity. What are the contours, what are the regulations that guide that process in terms of municipalities sourcing their own? Is there any National Treasury guideline first? I saw Cape Metro has issued the request for proposal, whose outcome seems predetermined on a generation of 500 megawatts. What are the contours like? What can municipalities do? What rates do they rely on? Is there any guidance in terms of what that can happen? And then the other issue which I want to talk to is in relation to the solar panel incentive tax or tax incentive, that it's only restricted to people who are paying personal income tax. But we know that in South Africa, majority of people, of Black people in particular, are not paying personal income tax, meaning that they're not going to be eligible for this intervention of National Treasury on saying you can claim back 15,000 rand if you buy solar panels. But majority of our people are not in that bracket of having to purchase solar panels and then claim 15,000 rand. What is the logic of that? Like, if you were to even aggregate the composition of the people who are eligible, it will reflect the majority of white people. That is what it's going to be. Basically, we are just providing solution for white people, because that the majority, those who are in the tax bracket, which you are saying they can claim incentives, exclude the majority of our people in terms of what happens. The last issue is that I didn't get a believable or clear explanation of the IFMS as to what is National Treasury going to do about it. cancelling it? Are there mechanisms to recover the monies that have been spent on it senselessly and wastefully over the years? What is happening with RMS, and how do we get to recover the money which was wastelessly and wastefully expended over the years? Those are the 4 issues that I wanted to deal with. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for those questions, Honorable Shivambu. Alan, can you check if there isn't any other member who wants to raise a question? Do you see any other hand?
No, there's no other hands, Ms. Abraham.
Okay. Over to you, National Treasury, Honorable Minister.
Let me deal with 2 of those questions. The first one is the ESCOM restrictions. The first issue is to say ESCOM indeed is restricted to 3 things, not 2. To 3 things. That is infrastructure maintenance, in actual upgrading its own infrastructure maintenance that exists now. It is our considered opinion that little effort has been done to date to invest largely on improving the performance of these plants. And some of the points, I mean, the information that's being gathered now is proving that point effectively. So ESCOM is at liberty to do 3 things at the same time. The first one is the ramping up investment in its power plants. Secondly is transmission. I'm told there are certain areas where we can get this capacity which has been developed in terms of renewables, but you can't put that stuff on the grid because of the transmission lines. And therefore, it's quite important that we prioritize transmission lines. Distribution is a major challenge. Now, because of its financial position, these restrictions are intended to ensure that over time, if ESCOM does not rely on the fiscus, it can build up its balance sheet. Now, if ESCOM by any reason decide there's a good opportunity, which is a green field they want to invest, and there's a better case to that, there's a window of opportunity in the sense that the ESCOM can, with the approval of the Minister of Finance, entertain that investment. So it's not closed completely. But we're trying to safeguard the balance sheet at the moment. We're exposed to 350 billion rand in the form of guarantees we've done to ESCOM. We're putting another 254 billion rand in the form of bailouts. We've got to be very careful how ESCOM spends its money in the circumstances. The second issue is the personal income tax incentives. Let's start first with the objective of the incentive. The objective of the incentive is to encourage people to move, to release pressure from the grid. That's what the intention of that thing is, not to provide subsidies for any other purpose other than to incentivize people to take solar panels and release pressure from the grid. That's basically the intention, and that thing is time bound. In other words, it's only available for one fiscal year. That's the incentive. It's time bound because its intention is to release pressure from the grid. Insofar as people who do not pay taxes, there's a different circumstances for them. For them is to mitigate the risk vulnerability for them, which conditional grants are provided to achieve that objective. And those conditional grants are not time bound. And as a result, in the last financial year, we had 16 billion for that purpose. And I can't remember the figure now in the current financial year. So to answer that question, or the poor are catered in a different vehicle and for a longer term horizon than the middle class, which is given this. I'm not sure whether I'm not looking at the color of the individuals. I suspect it's going to cover the entire middle class grouping, which is likely to do that, which is only for a year. So whereas the people who do not pay taxes, they're covered under the indigent policy for the rest of their lives, unless anything changes. So the objectives of these incentives are different, and therefore the support mechanisms are different. Marijan, your team can deal with IMF, IFMS, and the rest. Thank you.
Okay. Laura will deal. So maybe if I may also add with regard to electricity, because one of the things that is on the table is also to, through the grants, to enable the indigents to access solar and stuff. So instead of reticulating in the way that we do, that we enable them to also put up solar. So that program is actually being worked out with the MREs, which is responsible for INEP program that is supposed to reticulate electricity in the poor households. So that opportunity would be available even for the poor, in addition to them receiving free basic service of energy through equitable share. Thanks.
Thank you very much. In respect of the question around IFMS, what we will be doing this year is appointing the service provider, which has been outstanding for 4 years with the challenges of CETA. So that service provider who we're dependent on in order to be able to implement the system, we'll be appointing that service provider. We will be taking the generic system that was shown to the committee in their oversight visit. We will be taking all of those modules and adapting them and populating them in order to be relevant, appropriate, and applicable to South Africa so that they're ready for rollout. And we will be rolling out the e-recruitment system for the pilot areas. So that's what we'll be doing this year. This means that in the 24-25 financial year, which is our planned full rollout for IFMS, we will have the system and we will be ready for certainly for that rollout. Concurrent to that, we are continuing the negotiations in order for when IFMS when the service provider is appointed, that the work on the system is done in the latest technology. So those negotiations are continuing as we shift towards the cloud, as well as the discussions are continuing with CETA in order to allow CETA to continue to support the IFMS process, as they have an important role to play, not only in terms of the procurement, but they have a long-term role to play in respect of creating the Centre of Excellence that is intended to develop the skills internally within South Africa that will continue the rollout and the maintenance of the system across the whole of government, so that we can add value into the IT sector generally. Thank you, Acting DG.
Yeah, thank you very much. So on the issue of municipalities sourcing their own electricity, which is still in the spirit of increasing the availability of electricity given the challenge that we have. So we have issued a circular that talks to procurement and generation that is guiding municipalities. That is Circular 118. And DMR also has issued some guidance because the enabling legislation is actually sitting with DMR. Thank you.
Okay. Any parting shots from the minister? Or maybe let me check members first, whether there aren't any more follow-ups from honorable members before I call on the minister to do some closing remarks. Honorable Shimam.
Can I make follow up on the issue of the tax incentive?
Sure.
What basically is happening, and the minister is very much aware of it, is that the government is basically going to buy solar panels for people who are in the tax bracket and can be able to claim up to 15,000. That is basically the open. There's a lot of people, like millions of people, who are not eligible for benefits of the indigent policies of municipalities and are not in the tax bracket which is going to be given the incentive. What happens to those in terms of the interventions that we are outlining? And even the amount of money that you've mentioned as conditional grants, it's far, 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 far less to could meet the current crisis that is defining everyone else in terms of electricity. And I'm sure that even when you're responding, you realize that it's a senseless explanation as to what do we do about millions of people who are affected by the lack of electricity. Your interventions cover a very small bracket of people. What do we do about millions of people who are not eligible for indigent policy, free electricity, and are not within that tax bracket that you are giving incentives to? It's the manner in which it is framed now is extremely problematic in terms of what happens. I think, like, let's get a better explanation in terms of what happens. And I don't think even the explanation about what is going to be done about IFMS is adequate. Like, we need to be given a clear framework as to what is going to happen. What do we do? Because there's a system which the observation of the committee is that it's not there. And National Treasury has spent billions of rands on it. How do we recover the money, and what happens moving forward? Are you going to continue to spend the money on the same thing, which has been there for the longest time and it has not benefited anyone? That is the context of all these issues. Let's get clearer answers so that we know just what we're dealing with. And I did not hear the regulation that is given in terms of municipalities. I know the DMR process, but from National Treasury point of view, I remember that if a municipality is going to source 500 megawatts of electricity over a period of 20 years, that is expenditure of upward of 250 to 300 billion rands. What is the regulation in that regard? What gets to be done differently in terms of what happens? Like, municipalities just go and enter into contracts for 20 years, and then without any guidance, different systems and everything is there because they've got their own procurement policies. What is the guideline much more clearly that guides municipalities in terms of sourcing their own electricity? Let's get that clear, please. Thank you.
Acting DG, can you deal with the regulations and somebody finishes up with IFMS before I come to the tax issue and do the parting shot?
Yeah, so as I said, that there's a circular 118 that is guiding municipalities on the generation. So obviously, there has to be a way of them ensuring that they are not going to get themselves into trouble. So part of that allows for that process where they will still come and for approvals and for assessment in terms of what they're planning to do. So those municipalities that are able to do so will be able to do so. And I don't think it's every municipality that will be able to do so, because at the end of the day, it's really about ensuring that those that can generate, whether it's households or businesses or municipalities, are able to do so, so that we are increasing the generation of electricity, even for those that are not able to generate. Because obviously when you have got a limited supply, that also impact on the prices that affect everyone else. So I think that's really the idea of ensuring that there is a broader base in terms of generation of electricity to address the current shortfall in supplies that we are faced with, which are creating huge problems. Thanks, Minister.
In respect of the follow-up question on IFMS, certainly National Treasury shared with the committee in detail the historical challenges that we've had with IFMS during their oversight visit. And of those 2 days, one specifically focused on IFMS. And as we had agreed out of that process, we'll be presenting to the committee in May, along with DPSA and CETA on IFMS specifically. So that will certainly take the process forward. And it will be opportune to present in May, because by then we are expecting the current procurement process, which is underway currently with the RFI having been released, that will have significantly progressed. So we will be able to report to the committee not only what we're planning to do, but actually how we've shifted the delivery on IFMS by that time. Thank you.
Thank you,
Minister.
Chair. Thank you, Chair. Let me say, Honorable Shivambo is raising a fundamental question. And that question relates to what is being done with what is called the gap market. In other words, people who do not have their income is such that they are below the tax bracket and therefore cannot claim, but also they do not form part of the indigent. I don't have the answers. That question arises whether you're subsidizing education, whether you're subsidizing houses. We're beginning to grapple with that question of what is called the gap market. If the honorable member has got some proposal in this regard, we would appreciate that. I note the point as a critical shortcoming of the incentive, because that group is below the tax bracket, but does not form part of the indigent. And how do we take into account? In any event, it may well be that even if it was to be an incentive, they may not necessarily afford a solar system. I don't have answers to that question. I would appreciate some proposal from the honorable member. Thank you, Chair. And secondly, I want to take this opportunity and thank the committee members for their constructive criticism and suggestions and questions. We appreciate that. We learned through that process. And thank you very much, Chair. Have we lost the chair?
I'm still here, Honorable Minister, just struggling with handling the gadget. I'm sorry for that, Honorable members. Honorable members, that brings us to the end of our interaction. And I am comforted by Laura's the reminder that we shall be hearing more from them in terms of IFMS in May. That is very comforting. And I think the issues that have been raised here with regards to municipal finances as well, with regards to the issues that are in the ESCOM arena, And as well as, I think the issue of the bills is also not necessarily completely answered, in the sense that our expectation as a committee is that the department is going to go back and really rearrange or reprioritize whatever they have in terms of outstanding bills, so that in the little time that we now have, we can be able to deal with whatever has been seen as urgent or as a priority. And as I said, this now brings us to the end of our meeting today. We shall be interacting with SARS tomorrow, still on the APPs. Thank you very much, honorable members, and thank you to the minister and the administration in the office of the minister and the broader admin of National Treasury. Thank you also to the staff of Parliament who always make it happen for this particular committee. The meeting stands adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. See you tomorrow.